Hi, and welcome back to the Professional Lovers channel. I'm Al,
And I'm Patty,
and we're
the professional lovers. That got stuck, huh? We're the professional lovers, and we're glad to be back. It's been a minute. We've been married 27 years. Through that time, we've been blessed to facilitate relationships for other couples. And so, if you are interested in creating the best relationship that you can have, then you're in the right place. We talk a lot about relationship issues as we see them in particularly Married at First Sight. But since Married at First Sight is on hiatus and we won't see them again until January,
we're searching around for different venues, and the one that we have come across recently is the Red Table Takeover by Will Smith,
which happened like 3 weeks ago. But we're going to talk about some things from that
episode.
Thank you, of the Red Table, because there were a lot of great
relationship occurrences
and pointers,
right,
through his reconciliation with
Janet
Hubert, the first Aunt Viv from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Before we get into it, we just want to let you know that you should like the channel if you enjoy what you're hearing, and invite other people, share it, invite other people to join in. And we're looking forward to the next season of Married at First Sight, because there are going to be a couple new things that we do in that season. We won't tell you about it now, but we'll just tell you to keep an eye out.
Hopefully we'll just pique your interest.
Exactly. Remember to join our Facebook group. Hopefully some have seen it. I know a few have. And if you haven't, then hunt for Professional Lovers. That's the name of the Facebook group. And again, we'll put a link under the description of this video so you can find it easier. And make sure that you join so we can chat a little bit more when it comes to relationship issues. So, the Will Smith Red Table Takeover. Everybody knows, if you have any, if you are a fan of Fresh Prince, and then you know about the feud that went down between Will Smith and Janet Hubert Whitten after she left Fresh Prince. And I want to say that, first of all, it showed a lot of maturity on Will's part
to acknowledge her because of the reunion.
Well, to get to the point where he felt like he couldn't do the reunion justice.
Properly, right. With excluding her.
Exactly.
She was half of the existence of the show.
Right.
It ran for 6 years. She was the first Aunt Viv for 3. Right. And then she was replaced by Daphne Reed for the following 3.
Right. So I applaud him, even though it took 30 years. I applaud him for even getting to that point.
True.
Because there are a lot of people who have broken relationships, whether it's with family members or, in their marriage, whatever, that you don't ever get to that point.
True. Reconciliation never presents itself.
Or you never really go after it.
True.
So
and both parties, all parties, have to be willing.
So kudos to both of them. Kudos to her for being willing to talk to him after losing everything. And kudos to him for reaching out
to her. Yes.
Right. So there are a few things in the Red Table. He was there with an expert, a professional in the psychology counseling business, which I thought is good, because, there's a little stigma in our community, as an African American community, about using professionals for counseling. So I thought that was great. And then, let's kind of pick apart just a few things that we saw that are necessary in reconciling a broken relationship that you have, or even there are also factors that you can use when you are trying to handle conflict in your own relationship.
True.
Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to point out was he talked about how a lot of his response to the issues between he and Janet, the set, the show, were actually triggers from childhood trauma.
Safety mechanisms.
That he responded the way he did as a kid in order to stay safe.
Right. To develop or create a safe environment for himself.
Whether it's safety through humor or whether it's safety through his dragon.
True.
And that speaks directly to vulnerability.
Definitely. Which
is a major issue when it comes to how we act in our relationships. Being vulnerable is the hardest thing, especially if you've been hurt.
Especially. Because I don't know of anybody who likes being hurt and wants to enjoy that again.
Right. Self-preservation is like a natural mechanism.
It's a natural human response.
Right.
To anything that you feel threatened by or that triggers a reminder of that negative feeling that you once had through something that was similar to what you're going through now. So in order to not reach that feeling again, you find ways to offset that channel that's coming straight at you. And you try to find ways to maneuver, to alter its route, to navigate in a totally different area, or if it comes down to it, find a way to just stop it right where it is.
And often, especially if you're dealing with childhood trauma, you may have developed immature ways of handling that kind of a situation. And, excuse me, and instead of looking at that as you mature and develop, it's almost like automatic.
Nature.
It's automatic pilot. You just fall into it.
That's how you do what you do.
And so for him to, realize, even when he was talking to Dr. Ramani, he was realizing stuff even then that he hadn't even picked up on.
When he's standing outside of the situation,
right,
looking back on the set and how he responded to certain things on the set that he felt threatened by because he was not getting the response of everybody else's being happy according to the current situation, it became self-preservation. But it not only made it safe for that environment, it was manifested by what he had learned as a child.
Right. And so it was interesting that he said his real family dynamic moved over into his fake family.
Exactly. But it was all family.
But it was a family dynamic. Yeah, it was still a family dynamic. And so that makes it ultra important that, particularly before you get married, and this is where we talk about self-reflection. It's common for us to say everybody has baggage. We all bring baggage to a relationship, and we do.
It makes us who we are.
Right. But it's important to know what your baggage is.
True.
Why you have that, and how you can resolve it. Because I had to resolve my own baggage. You have to resolve your own baggage because I can't resolve yours and you can't resolve mine.
Exactly.
And that is something that a lot of couples, people do, is they look to the relationship, the other person, to help resolve that baggage.
Yeah, that's like having someone else, depending on someone else to make you happy.
Yeah.
That can't happen.
Right.
It doesn't happen.
And so it becomes important to unpack your own baggage and then to do what you need to do to resolve that, so that it does not impede the
progress of the relationship.
Of a positive relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Positive, critical, positive.
So however you have to do that, reading, talking, getting professional help, depending on the severity of that baggage or trauma, and everybody's is different. But to ensure that you start off on the best foot possible, especially if you're single, then start doing that now.
Yeah.
Start doing that now. Okay, so that was one. The second thing is that you have to be willing to take accountability for your part.
Own it.
In whatever that break is or was. Yeah. What I liked about what Will did when...
What he did not do.
Okay. When Janet, she was laying some heavy stuff on him based on what she was going through. And he didn't defend it himself.
Right.
And I know that Dr. Romney helped him with this. And that was to say, tell me what you were experiencing.
Right.
Tell me what you were going through, because I don't know your story. I don't know your side of it.
And that's like the situation where, in any situation that, there's a disagreement or whatever, you can't tell somebody that they made you feel a certain way, because they didn't make you feel a certain way. You feel a certain way from what transpired. Mm-hmm. So you can express how you feel about a situation. And from that, it is your hope that they respond to how you feel in a positive fashion, and trying to ensure that you don't feel that way. But to blame somebody is not how you resolve conflict in a relationship.
Right. So once he opened the door for her, mm-hmm. and made him so vulnerable to whatever she was going to say.
And he had to accept it. I mean, he opened it.
He had to accept it. And he let her talk. And, she laid it on him.
Yeah. And it was 30 years of pent up frustration and pain, true pain, mm-hmm. where it wasn't just about losing a job. I mean, she lost a job, she lost a husband, she lost a career.
She lost her family.
Her whole existence.
Yeah.
Her family.
As in her parents, sibling, that family is what I'm talking about.
Because now, what's wrong with your daughter? What's wrong with your sister? What's wrong with your wife? What's wrong with... I mean, it was like Will was the star. Mm-hmm. And it was looked upon as if she had done something wrong. And basically, just in a nutshell, not a segue, but sidebar, she came from a professional environment. Mm-hmm. She was a singer, a dancer. She was on Broadway.
She went to Juilliard.
Right.
And all of those things threatened him as a 21-year-old.
Will was from the streets of Philly. So professionalism was new.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in the industry. Yes, he's making money. Just because you make money at something don't necessarily make you a professional at it. Well, I guess it does, but you may not necessarily be doing it the way it can be done. But again, that was an environment that he was not aware of. And his perception of her professionalism was felt as if she did not like him.
And what he needed was approval.
Right.
Right. So the fact that he sat there, he listened without defending himself. Mm-hmm. He took what she said.
I mean,
and then, the realization was, I didn't know everything you were going through. Mm-hmm. I was 21 and stupid.
Basically.
Okay. Now, as an
adult.
Right.
As a parent, as a husband.
Twice.
As a
going through divorce.
Human person.
Looking at it with these eyes. Yeah. I can see now.
What he did.
Right. And I'm sorry.
Yeah. And he apologized. And she said she apologized because, again, she was trying to defend something that she had no idea why she was defending it. Because she didn't do anything other than what she knew to do. And even in her trying not to be an issue to the set, to the environment, to the cast. She would kind of remove herself, stay in her room, stay in her car until it was time, action. So she was trying to do what she could do to not be affected by what she was observing and what she knew to do as a professional.
And the thing is, though, however she came across, somebody's phone is ringing and messing us up.
Who is that?
We're going to just consider it to be background music.
Actually, that's all it is.
Okay.
If anybody can tell me the name of that song that you may hear, you may get a prize.
Right. We're just trying to stall until it stops.
One more time and we'll be through it. There we go.
So, but no, what I was saying was, we can't, she cannot be completely absolved from anything.
No.
She was reacting the way she felt she needed to. It could have come across as being difficult or being witchy. But again, when women act in ways to preserve themselves, it usually is labeled as witchy or difficult or angry, or those kind of things. And when you listen to what she was experiencing at that time, she had every right to do what she needed to do to preserve herself, however that came across.
She went through a lot.
But the bottom line is they both contributed to the vitriol of the relationship, and they both apologized. But again, I think that it's great that I applaud Will for listening and taking it and hearing it and letting her share, processing it, and then apologizing.
Is there anything that we have that relates to that?
Funny you should ask, because you know that we always come from our BAM book, Becoming a Professional Lover. And one of the tips in the book does talk about listening. Listen to each other. And what is the best way of listening? The listener should not be quick to react to displays of frustration or anger, especially if the issue seems trivial, because there's usually a deeper unmet need that's driving the action or reaction.
Definitely.
And so, yes, listening means not listening with defense. What can I say next to,
How do you
defend myself?
Yeah, exactly. How do you defend yourself? There's a reason why I did what I did.
Right. And there may be, but that's not how you promote listening.
Exactly. It's not the time to express why you did what you did. Now, if it becomes a discussion, then it's a discussion.
Right.
But when it comes down to, an unpleasant response to something that may be happening, a person is feeling a certain way about it. Just be willing to listen to why it is that they feel that way about it. Right. It may not be a big deal, but it may be a big deal because of something else. It might be connected to something, might not be connected to anything you're familiar with at all. But you only find out by listening.
And so we've talked about childhood or other trauma that impacts current relationships. We talked about taking accountability for your own part. Yeah. We're talking about listening without defense, right? Because all of those things can turn into what they had for 30 years, which was, back to the book, unresolved anger and resentment. Yeah. And unresolved anger and resentment will destroy a relationship, marriage or otherwise. And of course, it depends on how important that person is to you as to whether or not you think it's worth repairing.
True.
Right?
But a relationship, just me personally, if you're in a relationship with someone, You evidently care about that person. Now, it may be a situation where the relationship may not grow, but you don't tear down the person because there was something that you saw in that person that made you feel good about who that person was and how they related to you.
Hopefully, unless, they were fronting and you discovered that they were fronting. But we're talking about,
Or a green card.
good people, relationships
Yeah.
that don't work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the final tip from our book that, of course, we saw here was forgiveness. Forgiveness and love will save a relationship and or a marriage. And that's critical. It took them 30 years.
Yeah.
But regardless of how long it took them, Will Janet wanted to forgive. After a while, holding on to resentment and anger is just exhausting.
Well, I've heard this saying literally a good 3 or 4 times within the last couple of weeks.
And what's that?
That resentment and bitterness and how you feel towards somebody else is like drinking the poison and expecting the other person to die. Because it's how you're feeling that makes you feel that way. And
it's nothing that they're doing.
Right. They could be moving on in their life. I was going to say,
especially if the relationship is broken and they've gone on.
Yeah. And you're holding on to something.
Right. It's hurting nobody but you.
Yeah. Grudges.
And that's why often, the experts, professional counselors and whatever will say that forgiveness is not for the other person. It's really for you.
Exactly.
Forgiveness is for you.
True. Releasing you from that.
The power of that.
That experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, for reconciliation, and again, it depends on how important that relationship is to you, whether you think it's worth it or not to reconcile. Everybody has their limit.
True.
But especially in a marriage, there should be sans any kind of abuse. And we're not talking about relationships where abuse occurs. We're talking about relationships where, there's no abuse, but you just feel like, oh, I just don't have that feeling anymore. Or, I don't like the way he talked to me, or I don't like the way she did whatever, They're all levels of reconciliation, but they all require the same thing, right? All reconciliation requires vulnerability, accountability, and forgiveness.
Requirements.
Yeah. So, there we go. That's our take on the Red Table Takeover. And hopefully you got something out of that you find helpful.
We did. Because we had our own discussion off camera.
This is true. And we kind of do that a lot. We end up talking about stuff together. We're like, wait a minute. The camera needs to be rolling right now because we're going to forget everything that we talked about. But
eventually we'll cross those situations at one time or another.
Exactly.
The dynamics of an only child and a house of 5. So
the only girl, which is like being the only child.
Yeah.
But nevertheless. So anyway, thanks for watching. As I said, we hope you got something out of it. Happy holidays.
Definitely.
Stay safe as this COVID is still raging across the country. Stay healthy. Stay safe. I don't know if we're going to put anything up next week. Next week is Christmas week, so we'll see how it goes. We'll see. If something happens great that we think we need to talk about, then you'll see us next week.
Okay. Put your remarks in when you view this video.
We always love to read your feedback and make comments. So
your comments might,
unless you're out Christmas shopping, leave us a comment. If not, that's okay. we will see you the next time that we come on in preparation for the next season of Married at First Sight. Until then, peace.
Enjoy.